welcome all, and we'll turn it over to Dr. Gordon to kick stuff off.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Gray, thanks for everybody for coming. I know on a Friday and when you're a grad student, this isn't always the sexiest place to be. The grad commons, I have fond memories here, but I also know that there's lots of work that I did out there outside these walls. So I looked through this, and kudos to you guys for a whole semester of little workshops, and we're at the end, right?
Yeah, that's right.
The best. Save the best for last. So my story is pretty short. I don't have much to share, but I do want to showcase how different pieces came together for me with the LVGA. And so the LVGA, our job is to attract businesses to Southern Nevada, to all of Clark County. We represent Mesquite, Primm, Laughlin, North Las Vegas, Henderson, everybody. And our job is not the chamber's job. Once a business is here, they go to the chamber, the Metro Chamber, the Asian Chamber, Latin Chamber, Henderson Chamber, whichever chamber. Our job is just to get the businesses to come, to move to Las Vegas. We're not an incubator, we're none of that. So how this job came to be for me was I knew the guy who had the job before, Michael Benozzi. He used to, and some of you may know him, he used to work in Harry Reid's office. And when I was with GPSA, we interfaced a couple of times. He needed our support on certain things, and we needed his support on certain things, the senator's support. So we had a relationship, we never went out for beers, but we had a relationship. He knew who I was, and I knew who he was. So on LinkedIn, I saw that he left his job. I contacted him on LinkedIn and said, hey, your job seemed interesting. What exactly did you do? He kind of gave me a rundown. We had coffee a week or two later, and he explained a little more in detail to me about that. The following week, this was about a year ago, it happened in October last year. The following week, I promise you, our CEO, Jonas Peterson, was a speaker at my Rotary Club. And I walked up to him afterwards and said, hey, I saw you guys have an opening, what's this about? He said, we haven't even posted the job. I'm like, well, I'm interested whenever you post it. Here's my card. And I gave him a card. And so I kept in touch through November, and then December, the job was posted. I made the shortlist and went in for the prelim interview, and I found out that he was a part of Leadership Las Vegas, and I was a part of Leadership Las Vegas, not the same year, but that immediately gave us something to talk about. So 3 separate instances that had nothing to do with what I studied. I still don't think I'm the best qualified candidate. I'm drowning over there. I talk about imposter syndrome, it's times a million for me, and that is why I think it's not just what you know, it's more who you know. In this town, everybody has said this a million times, 6 degrees of separation. That doesn't exist here. It's more like 2 degrees or oftentimes 1 degree of separation in this town, and that is how I got this job. So how did that work for me when I was sitting where you guys were sitting? I was a presidential student ambassador. If you don't know what that is, look it up. Students apply to become presidential student ambassadors. That means whenever the president or the provost has an event, they invite certain students who they've pre-qualified to come and talk to donors. And that means you know how to carry a conversation, you know how to eat with your mouth closed, you know proper dinner etiquette, you know which forks and knives to use. All those things make a difference, and you're pre-qualified or pre-selected, whatever you want to call it. But then you get to play in those circles. All the donors that the university is courting for Hospitality Hall, for the new Thomas and Mack expansion, whatever it is, you get to see those people up close. Are you ever going to have beer with them? No. But certainly you can meet Diana Bennett, you can meet Tom Thomas, you can meet Julie Murray, you can meet these people who are the leaders in our community that as a student I would never have had the opportunity to meet. Do they remember who I am? Probably not, but at least that was an introduction. And if you're there and you stay long enough in student ambassadors, you're going to get invited to the same events and you're going to see those same people over and over. So hopefully over 2 years, 3 years, they'll start to remember you. I know now the graduate college has launched a student ambassador type program. I don't know much about that. That was after my time, after I had left. I assume it's run on the same kind of principles. So I would encourage you to check that out too. And then finally, just be knowledgeable about what's going on. I know as grad students, people are always talking about reading your field, reading your field, reading your field. But we have the New York Times out here. Your student government gives you the New York Times for free every day. Just find out what's happening in the world, because you never know where a conversation may lead. And you don't need to be the smartest person in the room. Just find something that other person is interested in and hone in on that. So for instance, right now, I did not grow up in Las Vegas. I did not go through CCSD. I know almost nothing about CCSD, but I do know they're going through some major shakeups. I do know that. I need to know that for my job, because if we're attracting businesses, they want to know what's happening. So I need to be, maybe not knowledgeable is the wrong word, but informed that is happening, and at least the major pieces that are moving. So be aware of those types of things, because whenever you apply for any type of job, that is what people care about. Also for Leadership Las Vegas, I mentioned that briefly. Check that out. That is something that you should do if you have the time and the energy. That connects you to so many people. It's a group of 44 people. So you meet them, it's a year-long program, but once you're done, the access to the alumni base, that's almost more valuable than the program itself. Because then you see in the community, I mean, I didn't know Jonas went through leadership. We were separate years, nothing, but once we found that out, we just had a connection. We could talk about a million other things, because leadership, oh, do you remember when you guys did that? Oh, did you do it this way? Oh, we did it this way. And then you just immediately have that connection point with somebody. Something that I want to show you real quick, and this is not something that I oversaw at my work, but not something that I did. I'm not a coder, I'm not a web developer at all, but something that we hope people will use a lot is what we call our data portal, and this is free to anybody. It's on our website. It's Get to Know the Real Vegas. So again, like I said, I did not develop this. I had to gather the data, and this is where you being graduate students and knowing how to use data and where to find it is interesting. So if you're in Tennessee and you want to move your business to Vegas and you have no idea where the city of Henderson is, boom, there's the boundaries of the city of Henderson. Again, if you've never been here and you want to know where all the casinos and hotels are, there, you hover over any of them, and there they are. You can zoom in and zoom out there. Education, if you know you have a kid in middle school, you have a kid in high school, and you want to live in, say, North Las Vegas, there, now you know those are the schools. And if you know which area you want to buy property in, say you want to live over here, then you know, okay, here are the schools that I can potentially go to. So this is interesting for people who don't know our market, but again, as graduate students, I was not an economics major. I did not do this, but I do need to know, hey, when people talk about what is the unemployment rate, I do need to know what that means. I do need to know where to find this data. So if I click here, again, like I said, I didn't put this together. I found the data. Unemployment rate. This will now tell me, oh, here's the source. Here's where Michael found it. Michael put this together. If you don't believe Michael or the LVGA, here, click on this link and that will take you to the primary source. And then here you can see when it was last updated and when's the next scheduled update. So is this any new information that I found? No. I was just a graduate student and learned how to play with with data. And then over here, because of tracking, I knew this was important, so I just told the web person, hey, make this happen. And this is this is what I think I want it to look like. So there is something. So here's a whole bunch of data. I mean, I'm not going to walk through all this, but this is something where I think I didn't know about the job, and because the guy I took the job from did not have this kind of background, they hadn't done this before, and so I think whatever you learn here, and even the courses that you don't like, there's always something that you can implement in your future job. And would I ever have thought, oh, I'm going to develop this web tool? No. Like I said, I'm not a web developer. I'm not an analytics person, but I did know how to find it and where to get it and how to give that information to the person who could then play further with it. So that is my story.
Awesome. Thank you.
My name is Hernand Dela Cuesta. As mentioned earlier, I just graduated about 7 months ago, so I'm like almost pretty much just a little step above a grad student, you know, finally getting my career in place. As mentioned, I work for United Healthcare Group, and it's a unique company in Las Vegas because we are a payer and provider. So not only we're on the benefits side, but we're also on the services side, similar to Kaiser in California, and I think it's the model moving forward as far as healthcare. So I'm very excited to be there. My presentation is going to be very basic, and these are the tips and things that I learned as a graduate student. So a little bit about me. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area. I got my Bachelor of Science in Exercise Physiology at UC Davis. So during that time I was thinking if I should be a physical therapist. I have a cousin that was a physical therapist, so I was kind of leaning towards that. I relocated to Las Vegas in 2005. Bought a house. Wasn't a great time to buy it during that time, but I was starting that new chapter of my life, and I worked for Keith Clevin Institute. It's a physical therapy place here in Las Vegas. He is actually the first physical therapist and only physical therapist in Nevada to be inducted in the Sports Hall of Fame. So he's worked with people like Tiger Woods, Mike Tyson, and a lot of people in Las Vegas, a lot of politicians, and it was a wonderful experience. I'm married with 2 children. In fact, when my wife was pregnant with my second child, I looked at myself and I was like, I probably have to do something. I have to provide for my family, so I decided to go back to school. And I wasn't sure at first what field to get into, so I did a lot of research. And since I had that medical background, I found out that healthcare administration was a good option. And so obviously when people think about hospitals, they think about the clinicians, the doctors, and the nurses. But there's also a business side to that. So there's a lot of things you can do with that. And I'm going to talk about that. So sometimes when you have your focus, and Michael mentioned, is you think it's going to be this, but you can do almost anything with that. So anyway, so I got my master's in healthcare administration. I just got it in May 2016, and now I'm currently employed as a key accounts manager. So what that entails is we have a book of business. I support the account executives and basically service that account for retention and various things. So I have to reach out to the different departments and get problem solved. I really like United Healthcare because it's a company that's really big on growth and development. I have a mentor there, and so he sees me about anywhere from 1 time to 2 times a month, and so we have a meeting, and so they're really kind of checking up on you to make sure that you're going around the right path. So that's one of the great things that I like about United Healthcare. So again, these are basic tips for success. These are the things that I looked to when I was a student. First thing was, attend, if you haven't done so already, attend the graduate college and program orientation. This is actually, you mentioned you didn't know about the Graduate Commons. That's how I found out about the Graduate Commons. I went to that orientation, and they told about the various services that the GSPA can provide, and actually a lot of these things that I wrote here came from that orientation, and so the first thing that they mentioned is to get to know your programs, graduate coordinator, faculty and staff. This is very important. You want to talk to the faculty and ask, if you're unsure which career paths you can have and options, you can ask the faculty, what did some of the past students that had this degree, what did they do, your favorite students and that type of thing. Build a rapport, build a relationship. And the one thing that I say to a lot of people is, while you're a student, this is the time to really take advantage of these relationships, because if you come afterwards, I know people in my program, they ask for help after they graduated because they couldn't find a job. But when you're a current student, it's a priority. They work for you, so you need to take advantage of that. So after a class that you take, you have them captive almost. You could just afterwards say, hey, and do that, versus if you wait till later, you won't have that opportunity, so you're really a priority if you're a student now. So if you're a student, really get to know your faculty and the staff, and they can really open doors for you. And the same goes for your fellow students and peers. Ask about their plans. And so that I was one of those social people where I would always, hey, let's all get together, like within my cohort, we would go, for drinks or for dinner and that type of thing. So we really built a bond, and from that we found out, hey, I got a position accepted, and I'm a director in wound care. Oh, really? Oh, well, I'm doing, and you ask about that. Oh, really? That's neat. Another person I knew is physician relations, and so I asked about that. So it's really about getting to know your peers and students and asking about their plans and what they have, and that's very helpful. And obviously another thing is going to be joining clubs, organizations in your field, attend mixers and network events. There's a healthcare administration club that I attended a few of their meetings, and there was a guest speaker there that really inspired me. From United Healthcare, so that actually got me thinking about that company and looking into that. So go to all the events that you can as much as possible, career night, going to things like this, panels, and it gives you kind of a good perspective on that. And lastly, from all of that, from speaking to the faculty, the students, going to these events, I wrote a list. This is what I did. I put it on my cell phone. I said, what are the potential careers and jobs, and from just doing everything like that, and I wrote it all down. Like I said, talking that first, director of wound care, and this is what you need to get that. I found out about fellowships. I found about different options that I have, and so I wrote that whole list down for different healthcare administration jobs. And so also, again, I'm plugging in the GSPA, but learn about the workshops, the resume building, interview. I can say for the one thing that I learned going to these workshops is for the resume, there's key words. So a lot of the resume is going to be digital these days. So when you're applying for a job, there's going to be key words in the job description. So you pull those keywords towards your resume. So depending on the position that you're applying for, you have to update your resume specifically with keywords for that thing. And then when the computer reads it, then you'll be called, more than likely you'll be called for an interview if a lot of those hit. So that's one thing I didn't know. So because I had just one generic resume each time, so when I did that, I got more opportunity. And lastly, for the interview, one of the things that I learned too is when employers interview, they look for three main things. is they want to see a degree of intelligence, enthusiasm, and confidence. And the last piece of that is they want to see, I think Michael touched on it, is something like a rapport where they can relate to you. Because the person interviewing you they're going to work with you. They want to like you. So that's the thing. And so that's the big thing when it comes to interviews, those three things. And if you don't have an experience, be open to an internship and a fellowship. That's really, after those three advice for interview, at the end of the day, they look at experience. They want to know that, and it could be character. Your character, like he said, he was the president, so you have that character, that certain thing. You might have the specific experience for that. And the other piece I wanted to give advice is, I always say, for the skills that I lack, I have effort. I put effort in it. So I might not have the skills, but I have the effort to make up for that, and I'll make sure I'll learn those skills. And so it's basically about being assertive in your goals, and just be a bold participant in life. When you're passionate and you have purpose and you're just willing, you have an eagerness to learn, people will pick up on that, and employers and people around you will recommend you. So that's pretty much my story, and it's what I stand for. And if you have any questions, I'll be in the back.
Fantastic. So now I'll turn it over to Camille McCue.
My name is Camille McCue, and one of the things that Peter said that he really wanted us to emphasize is, advice for you. So I really have a couple of key pieces. The first one is say yes all the time. When there's an opportunity, even if you think it sounds idiotic, say yes. Even if you think you are utterly unqualified, say yes. The second is you will never be done with your education. And I hope that that's not a bad thing from your perspective. I work in technology, and there will never be a time where you know enough or you've reached the end, because it's constantly evolving and changing. So I won't give you my whole life story, but I do want to kind of start a little further back to give you a sense of why saying yes matters. My parents were both educators, brilliant people. My father, a PhD microbiologist, mother, math science teacher and researcher. But I was very much taught that you sort of go and you step in this very hierarchical order. You move from step A to step B. You need a certain level of qualifications in order to be prepared for the next step. If you really notice that many of the people in the world that succeed, that's just not true. Basically, they just dove in, whether they truly had the qualifications or not, and they learned as fast as they could, and they had the confidence to know that they could do it. And I don't know if this is a male-female thing, because we have this conversation constantly in my household. I have a 16-year-old son who's an entrepreneur who actually attends here, and I have a 13-year-old son who's a We Are the World, United Nations type. And my husband is an attorney. He's an intellectual property attorney. And they constantly tell me that I underestimate myself. And I think that that's probably true, and I've gotten greatly past that, not only through my experiences, but through my family's constant support. But that is probably one of the key messages that I would transmit to everyone, is just dive in, say yes. I have done that some, and it has constantly led me to weird and interesting places that I didn't think I was going to end up at when I was, a teenager. So when I went to college, I was a physics major. I started college fairly young, and I got through my first year, which then put me at about 60 hours because I had placed out of things. And I realized that I kind of hated physics. I really couldn't envision myself doing physics research. I thought, oh my God, what on earth am I going to do? And around this time I was doing a little soul searching. Now I'm from Texas. There was an ad on the wall for doing the Miss Austin pageant. So everyone in Texas is really into pageants, and even though that seems like, oh my God, it's such misogyny, it's so sexist, it's just something everyone does in Texas. So I entered. I thought, that's fun, that's interesting, that's weird, with the main reason being that there was a giant sum of money at the end if you won, and I was really dead broke. I needed that cash. I entered. It actually was a tremendous experience, because what it taught me to do was not present in that sort of physicsy science fair manner that I had always presented. I had to be a little more folksy. I had to be a little more communicative with the everyday person, and I learned how to do that, and it was very, very fun. I didn't win, I actually got first runner-up to the girl who got Miss Austin, who was first runner-up to the girl who got Miss Texas, and that Miss Texas won Miss USA. So I was really only like 2 degrees of separation from Miss USA that year, which was crazy. But I greatly enjoyed that experience. One of the things they made us do, though, in the pageant that I was abominable at was dance. I had no idea what I was doing. I had never done that in my life. So as I sort of progressed on through with the rest of my degree, and I ended up, by the way, switching to get a math degree, I realized I probably needed to learn to be a little more coordinated. And so there was a aerobic instructor training at my gym. So I went through that. I was bad, but I learned how to do it. Then I started teaching aerobics classes. One day a woman came up to me in my aerobics class and said, you know, I work on this horrible, you know, no one watches it cable access channel, and we really need somebody to write and do a on-air news piece. I knew nothing about this, but I said yes. Okay, I did that. No one watched it, which was great because I was like, you know, horribly ill put together and didn't know what I was doing, but I learned how to do it. Fast forwarding a little bit, when I graduated, and I'm going to come back to the TV thing in a second. When I graduated, I went to work for IBM. Again, needed money. Went to work in Dallas, made some great friends, made one of my very best friends, Holly Henderson, and she went out to her account one day and said, oh, I met this great guy. He, you know, owns this company called Micro Solutions that we're working with selling him PCs. Let's all go out for drinks. We all got to know each other over the course of, you know, the next year. He ended up selling Micro Solutions. They stayed together for a number of years, and we were all very close friends. He sold Micro Solutions, ended up creating something that was basically broadcast.com, sold that to Yahoo for $6 billion. Turned it into broadcast.net, bought the Dallas Mavericks. It's Mark Cuban. So we've stayed friends, and just through a very tangential weird thing because I said yes to a job at IBM in sales, which I knew nothing about. Fast forwarding a little bit, I ended up becoming a classroom teacher. And after a year of teaching in the classroom, I was asked through a very tangential relationship if I would come and audition to teach physics on a television channel. And because I had done that in previous years, I knew how to put together something and operate the equipment and speak to the camera. So I started teaching physics on a television network that then went out to very rural parts of the country like the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and some very strange outlying places where they couldn't find a physics teacher. So kids would tune in to television, I would teach them, that's how they got their credits. During the course of this, there was a new television network that was starting up that wanted to have its inaugural program. They brought on board a new astronaut named Tom Jones, no relation to the singer. But through meeting him and interviewing him for this television program that we did, he said, you know, hey, there's this NASA field center called NASA Langley Research Center. They just got this big pot of funding from NASA headquarters to do a series of distance learning programs, but the woman who is going to run them is heading off to work on her PhD at Penn State. Well, I was living in San Antonio at the time. This job was out in Hampton Roads, Virginia, but I said yes. So I moved to a part of the country I knew nothing about, had never been in, and I took that job. And I did that for a year, and I did well, and I was moved up to NASA headquarters, where I then needed to move to Washington, D.C. So I said yes again. Now, I'm not going to say this was all super easy. It was lonely sometimes. When you move to a city you know no one, nothing about. I actually cried so hard when I moved into my apartment in D.C. that the moving guys had left something behind, and they came back and they go, lady, we can hear you like wailing in the hallway. And it's true, I was. And it's like I literally threw my arms around the moving guy, and I was like, I'm so sad and lonely. But I did it because you just have to dive in and say yes. So through these long series of connections, and I ended up in Las Vegas. I worked here for a couple of years. I'm not sure if you knew that. That's actually the job I had when I first came to Las Vegas. It kind of goes on and on and on, with every turn being me just saying yes, whether I truly had the requisite background skills or not. Because you can do it. If you don't do it, then somebody else will, and they're no more likely to have the skills than you do. Reach out to people, ask for help. I've never been someone who's shy, and I learned that from my friend Holly at IBM. In a meeting, they would, throw out some acronym, and I think, oh God, I don't know what that means. She would just throw her hand in the air. What is that? Ask the question. And the only thing you're risking is you think there's this perception that you don't know something, but who cares? It doesn't really matter because now you do. and you can move that forward. And that's one of the things that drives me nuts with my employees is if I've got somebody who doesn't really seem to get it and doesn't want to say that, and they sort of put on that puffery of, oh, well, you know, I've got that in the works, and they don't know. I mean, in your job, you're likely to kill somebody if you don't know, right? You know, you can't make, somebody could lose millions of dollars. So it's better to just, you know, have the confidence to know you can do it, but if you can't figure something out, admit that you don't know that piece and you're going to go figure it out. And I think that's really, really important. One of the interesting things that this has also stemmed from this is that Mark Cuban and another colleague of mine, a gentleman named Sean Patel, who's a homegrown Las Vegan, who had gone on Shark Tank, gotten funded through Mark, and then my son, who is 16, are writing a book called How Any Kid Can Start a Business. So just by people you know and connections you make and relationships that you develop, you never know where there's going to be an opportunity. Maybe there won't be, but maybe there will be. And so I think that network aspect is absolutely important. And don't go into it with the attitude of I'm here to, you know, make a potential, you know, job relationship. It's just more a matter of getting to know people because, again, in this town it is really, really true that it's kind of who you know and how you can all work together to move the city forward. I'm extremely proud of Las Vegas and I love living here, and we've been here since '96. So I think it's really, really amazing to think that there's a lot of opportunity for us to not only enjoy our jobs and do things we're passionate about, but to impact our overall community. The latest thing, and along the way I started writing dummies books. So I've written 8 dummies books too. And actually my first one I submitted a proposal when I was working here at UNLV. They had a line called such and such for teachers, not just for dummies. They didn't have one on PowerPoint. I use PowerPoint all the time, and I thought, oh my God, I can write a book on PowerPoint for teachers. And I said, who do I call? Who do I talk to? They said, well, you submit a proposal and you do a sample. So I made it look exactly like the way dummies books do, and I laid it out that way. But I had, you know, all the teacher stuff and how you do the slides. And so I started writing dummies books in '97. So never think you can't. Because if not you, then who, right? So my latest thing that I've been working on is a couple years ago, I had worked, Peter and I know each other because his wife and I worked together at the Alexander Dawson School. And I was there for many years, and my children went through the school. It was a good sort of stable place to have my kids going through school and me also working at the same place. So that's really probably the longest job I've ever had. I was there for 11 years. And as my kids are now moving on, I had an opportunity to do something really, really exciting. I work in STEM. I teach STEM engineering classes, math competition classes, develop future cities curriculum, a variety of things in that realm. And I had the opportunity to go to the Adelson educational campus. So Sheldon and Miriam Adelson have a school, it's a Jewish day school, pre-K through grade 12, that is a private school in Summerlin. And there was an opportunity to work with a donor and the Adelsons to do something highly innovative in STEM, and it was not defined as to what. So I worked with the donor. There would be an initial $1 million with other millions should there be an opportunity to need that funding. And we came up with a very exciting technology initiative. A couple of parts are mundane, like one-to-world, everybody needs a device, all teachers need technology professional development, but the real centerpiece was a startup incubator, an educational startup incubator where students would do computer programming, digital media, and making. So we have a fab lab facility where basically you have access to tools for 3D design, for fabrication of drones, robots, electronics, anything that you can imagine in your head that back in the olden days you maybe could have fabricated with woodshop tools or drawn on paper and then ultimately had to send out to somebody who had extensive expertise. Now students can bring those ideas to life. So the startup incubator, we just 1 year after conceptualizing this, we had the whole thing in play. So conceived it, got it passed through the board, through Sheldon, through the donor, built it. And the way we did it was we actually overhauled the library because the library was a basically unused facility on our campus. It was 5,000 square feet, and not very many people were using it for its intended purposes because once you have technology, what we were talking about earlier, I didn't really come to this library very much. Once you have technology, you can access any information you need anywhere. So students and teachers were not using it, and when you have a school campus, 5,000 square feet of unused facility is enormous and not a reasonable use of your facilities or your money. So what we did was we created the startup incubator, and we have students in grades 6 through 12 engaged in a hands-on STEM curriculum where they can invent and create and code apps and make all sorts of very progressive ideas and bring them to life. We encourage them to work through the design cycle and identify a problem they see in the real world, and then start through that questioning process of how do I resolve it, how do I empathize with the individuals who this will impact, how do I design a solution, how do I prototype that solution, test it, and then put it into play. And then with the older students, we also focus on the lean startup model of how do I take that product and then bring it to market. So we are partnering with UNLV College of Engineering for that prototyping phase, and then the UNLV Center for Entrepreneurship for bringing it to market. So what's really fun to look at, though, I think that really tells the story, are the photographs of the kids. And I won't scroll through all these separately, but you can see there's 3D design and fabrication, so you can see some of the things the students have started making. And like, this is really cute, I love this. These two seniors made this. It's a spirit stick / back scratcher. So it's a little bear paw. You can see they're working on the design side. This young man, Brandon, is a senior. He's working on rocketry. You can see we use some simple free programs like Tinkercad, and the students design in Tinkercad, and then they end up printing out their products. So we use FlashForge printers. Those are around $500 a pop, but we have 20 of them. And so every student can, design and make right there on site. And we're also working on a dreidel competition, so the entire school is working on the design of dreidels to, their initial ones you can see like this is really too much of a base. It's not, able to spin very well. So they have to go back and rethink, using some concepts from physics. How do I redo this? Lower school students are working on turkeys. Robotics, using devices called the finches and coding those, using Mindstorm's robots. Again, lean startup planning, brought in individuals. We're continuing to bring in individuals. I'll probably be knocking on your doors, talking to you and asking you to talk to the kids, because that's important for them to hear from professionals. Programming, so programming apps. So these are some examples of real apps that you program, and they make real apps that you actually put on your phone and you can sell. Digital media, this is a lot of fun. Digital design, we have a giant green screen wall, high-end Adobe software. We have an audio booth for sound editing. Electronics, we're just moving into electronics. Leon was just teaching one of our senior girls how to solder just yesterday, working with a modified Arduino set and then programming. And then this is always cute, and everybody always loves this. Everybody wants to see the lower school kids. So this is Rachel Zeiter. She's a young woman who I snapped up right out of college. She had a lower school teaching degree and mentored her in how to teach STEM, even though that wasn't her background. But she's smart and she's young, and so they'll figure out anything and stay up all night to figure that out. So she is now inspiring our whole youngest generation of students at Adelson to pursue electronics and engineering design and computer programming. So she's working with them on a device called a Makey. It's where you create an alternate user interface for a computer. This young man, he's just a first grader, he's doing an engineering design / fairy tale project where you have to think about the design structure of the bridge for the 3 billy goats gruff. And these young ladies, same thing, they're putting their goats on, making sure that they avoid the troll. Lego We Do, it's Lego robotics for the youngest age group, so you build and then you program, and he is using his iPad to tape her. Electronics with snap circuits. And again, these are some of what the lower school students designed and printed on their first round, making small Monopoly pieces and then their turkeys. So, thank you so much. There's a lot to say about all the exciting ways that you can work in the world of education, and wow, is there a need. But again, just say yes to every opportunity, and you will not be done, because you're going to constantly need to. Once you get this degree, there's still going to be a need for you to continue keeping your skills sharp. I'm still taking courses through St. Scholastica in the computer science teacher realm, and I'm taking a course next semester from Harvard Extension on wearable technologies and the Internet of Things. So If you're going to be relevant, you're going to have to keep your skills fresh. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Now we'll turn it over to Nathan Harper.
Speak briefly about my graduate school career. I'm originally from Kansas, so I'm also from the Midwest, and something that strikes me is sort of an ethos from those areas. It's volunteerism, it's being involved, saying yes, but also just being there and being involved in civic life. I come from a lot of small towns, and so community building is very important. It was a very important part of my life growing up. In my graduate school career, it was a very similar thing. I had grad school classes, and one of the first classes I took, the professor said, I need volunteers for my lab. I said, I knew this is what I want to do. I want to be an archaeologist. I want to work in the field. So once again, you say yes. You go and you volunteer, and one of the first things I ever did, my background is in skeletal biology and human remains, is I was given a box of fragmentary ribs. A box of fragmentary ribs. And he said, put them together. So I spent the next 2 weeks trying to see if any of these ribs would fit together. And at the end of that 2 weeks, I had one join out of I don't know how many thousands of pieces. But in doing that, I was able to demonstrate that I was willing to put in the work, willing to make an effort. And after that, I was involved very shortly after that, through some training and some other things, I was involved in forensic anthropological cases, criminal cases actually, where I was going out in the field and recovering evidence for criminal cases, and supplied some documentation, some other work for testimony for criminal cases. Now, when I came to UNLV, I came here in 2003, I was very focused on an academic pursuit. I was looking for an academic position. I was planning to be a professor. I was going to solve all the problems in prehistory. My background in archaeology is actually in the Mediterranean. And so I had worked for over a decade, every summer, every season, 3 to 4 months a year, living on the island of Cyprus, working in Turkey, Jordan, Israel, Greece. I received a Fulbright fellowship and spent a year living on the island of Cyprus. After I came here to UNLV to pursue my PhD, I once again pursued fellowships and spent 2 years living in Athens, Greece at the American School of Classical Studies there. So I never expected to end up here in Las Vegas permanently, and that's one of the things I think we can take away also is life comes at you pretty fast. It makes many twists and turns, and you don't necessarily know exactly where you're going to end up. So having an open mind, saying yes, being accepting of what's coming at you, but at the same time focusing on your own goals and pursuits, it can lead you to some pretty interesting things. I interned at the Springs Preserve. I interned at the Springs Preserve in 2007, sorry, when I was a graduate student. And it was mostly because they paid $19 an hour, and I needed the money. It was in my field. This was before the Springs Preserve was open, so we were doing compliance work. That is, we were going out to make sure that we weren't digging up any very important cultural, archaeological remains. We weren't digging up anybody's grandma or anything like that. We were doing the construction of the Springs Preserve. And so this was before I received my fellowship in Athens at the American School of Classical Studies. So I saw that as a stopgap job before going on to pursue this further academic work. After I finished my 2 years in Athens, I came back to Las Vegas in 2010. I was still working on writing my PhD dissertation, and my partner at the time told me she was pregnant. So that changes your perspective again, once again. That $19 an hour doesn't look like a whole lot when you've got a kid on the way, does it? So that changed my perspective again, and said, let's look at some more permanent employment and something that's going to help support a family. I was invited to apply for the position for the preserve archaeologist in 2010. They had some previous archaeologists that had left and gone on to other opportunities. And so it was actually myself and my partner and another intern who had been at the Springs Preserve who were invited to apply for this job. I ended up getting the job there at the Springs Preserve. I don't really know what that means in the end, but I didn't expect to end up in Las Vegas being an archaeologist, working at the site of the original springs of Las Vegas. This is Las Vegas. Las Vegas is the Meadows, Springs Preserve, the springs there. That is the Meadows. It is Las Vegas. So, and this is a trend you see throughout your career. Even though I consider myself an in-the-ground, in-the-dirt archaeologist, looking for artifacts, looking for things that are hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of years old, these days I spend most of my time excavating my desk. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, and it's just, I think this is the trend everybody takes in their careers. You trend towards more administration as you move on, you gain more experience. And some of that is because you have that experience, you gain that experience over time, and people look to you for answers, and the other sort of trend of that is, once again, as your family grows, you're going to want to have that money to be able to support them. So, a lot of the work as I said, a lot of the work I do is compliance work. And as my responsibilities increase, not only at the Springs Preserve, but also for the Las Vegas Valley Water District, the Southern Nevada Water Authority, which is the umbrella agency for these organizations, I was doing a lot more compliance work. And that means I had to interact with lots of local governments, City of Las Vegas, City of Henderson, Boulder City, Clark County government as well. Through historic preservation work that I've done at the Springs Preserve. We recently finished restoration on 4 early cottages that were built by the railroad in 1910, 1911, some of the oldest buildings still left here in Las Vegas. And that required a lot of work with the City of Las Vegas Historic Preservation Committee, the Centennial Committee, City of Henderson. We also, among my responsibilities is the Clark County Wetlands Park, about the 2,700 acres there, and then multiple archaeological sites out there. So that requires coordination with City of Henderson and Clark County. And also public utilities. I think when you're pursuing a job, you may think that you have a straight track of what you want to do. There are jobs for accountants. There are jobs for psychologists. There are jobs for statisticians. There's all sorts of jobs in local and city government, but also things like public utilities, LVVWD, SNWA, Regional Transit Authority, Nevada Energy, Nevada Department of Transportation. All of these are looking for people, qualified people to fill roles that you might not expect to be if you're pursuing an academic career. Does anybody know what this map represents? This map is of all federally controlled lands in the state of Nevada. Currently, Nevada has one of the highest proportions of federally owned and managed lands in the country, let alone in the West. And so, once again, with compliance work, I have to work very closely with lots of other different federal agencies. Bureau of Land Management, Reclamation, National Park Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Forest Service, EPA, Department of Energy. All of these I've had to intersect with at some point in my work. And it's very eye-opening to see those relationships be built as well. Now, all of these, you know, if you're an environmental scientist, this is an excellent place for you as well. If you're a biologist, this is an excellent place for you. Restoration ecology, geology, archaeology, any of these things, they're looking for people in these positions. Now, one of the issues of working for the federal government is sometimes you're at the whim of politics and what's happening in the world. And we know with the incoming administration, there's some questions about how they're going to handle the environment and environmental compliance. So you have to be aware of those as you're looking forward and sort of future casting what you're going to do with your career and your life as well. So you need to be cognizant of what's happening not only within these agencies, but also politically, because it can affect what you're doing. Now, I am currently finishing up another major project there at the Springs Preserve. We did the restoration on these 4 early Las Vegas cottages. We just completed construction on essentially a replica streetscape of early Las Vegas. We built a replica depot, original depot, a replica First State Bank that's on the corner of Main and Fremont, a replica saloon, Arizona Club, a replica, like I say, a non-specific general store, and a replica of the Lincoln Victory Hotel that still stands down on Main and Bridger. And building community is very important for my job because we're trying to integrate people into Las Vegas. And we know it can be very difficult to make people feel like they belong as part of this community. because people think there's no history, and whatever history they do see, they think it starts with Bugsy Siegel. So part of my job is to let people know that there is a history in this city before the Strip, before the Flamingo, and before all of that. And building that community helps people connect to this place. And so that's a very important aspect of my job at the Springs Preserve. Now, something else you might be considering is I had only visited Las Vegas once before I came here as a graduate student. And coming from Kansas, I never expected this to be a place I was going to live. I thought this would not be a place to raise children. And this is a city of nearly 2 million people. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot of culture and community outside of what happens along the Strip. And one aspect of this is just museum culture here in Las Vegas has grown immensely over the past decade. The Springs Preserve, we're celebrating our 10th anniversary next year, which is incredible to think about. The Mob Museum, the Las Vegas Natural History Museum, the Neon Museum, Clark County Heritage Museum over on Boulder Highway. All of these institutions are growing. All of them are becoming even more professionalized. Some of these may have started as small storefront type museums or cultural institutions, but now they're growing, they're professionalized. They're looking for people who are trained in museum studies, who are trained in curation, registrars, these types of things. And so if you're thinking perhaps that Las Vegas isn't the place for you, make it the place that you want it to be. Become involved in the community, become involved in civic life. We were talking about CCSD and the reorganization there. One of the aspects of this reorganization is these are becoming empowerment schools, to paraphrase, to sort of shorthand that. And what happens is about 80 to 85% of that budget is going back to the local school, and there's an organization team that's going to decide how that money is spent. I was just elected to the organization team for my children's elementary school last night, and it's an immense responsibility to shape how this school is going to be built, how it's going to move forward, how we're going to use money, how we're going to integrate technology into our education in the future, and how is that best going to serve our kids and our community moving forward. So, a little bit reticent coming here as a student, as a graduate student, never expected to end up here. I'm here now, and now I want to make this place something special for my family going forward. So, I don't regret any of my decisions. You should never regret any of your decisions unless you end up in jail. But it is what you make of it. And so be courageous, be bold, ask the right questions, make those connections, make those networking connections, and say yes, and don't stop trying. Don't stop putting forth the effort. Great. Thank you.
Well, fantastic presentations, and thank you all for sharing your experiences. So what I'll suggest at this point is if all four of you could go up front, and then we just open it up for questions.
For the PhD candidates, I know PhD track is a lot of research related. How did you determine that you were going towards the, business route or entrepreneur route, or how does that fit into if you were interning with?
I did an internship, not with the LVGA, but I just realized early on that I did not want to be in academia. At the publisher parish did not attract me. I was certainly interested in the research and wanted to know more and get it out there, but I did not want to gun to my head, if I can put it in those terms. So I wanted to be more out there, and I knew I liked interacting with people. I liked bringing people together, getting things done, and that's where I knew that wasn't going to happen in academia. So, I mean, present company may disagree, but yeah.
I never intended to do research or be in academia. I did my master's degree in my early 20s, and I didn't do my PhD until much later. So I finished in 2011. But for me, I just felt like in education, I knew that those top jobs were going to require a PhD. That was just all there was to it. And it wasn't necessarily that it made me any smarter or any better. It was just a gate that I was going to have to go through in order to be able to outcompete other people. I will say though that of my 3 academic experiences, undergrad, my master's, and my PhD here was absolutely the best. I had a lot more flexibility, a lot more creativity. I worked with Randy Boone in college education and Dave James in engineering. And they understood that I needed a lot of flexibility to be inventive, and they gave me that. I was able to do a lot of independent study courses, a lot of online courses, and do some things that were sort of out of the box. But they wanted me to do that, and that was what I wanted to do as well. So, picking a research project was mostly just tied to finding a group of students, and I used my own students. I actually did sort of action research and a qualitative study on my own students. And I didn't have any barriers as far as getting the proposal approved or any of the stages along the way. The biggest challenge for me was when I got to the end, when I needed to write up my dissertation. I was so involved in my job and my family and just all my other activities. It took a while to get that focus. And so I finally did just take a year off of work to get that part done. And that was tough because I didn't want to not be in the workplace, but I was seeing that I wasn't getting it nailed down. And you gotta finish at a certain point. You can't drag it out forever.
Were you working full-time while pursuing your?
I've always worked, I was working part-time. So I write books, I work, and then I was doing my PhD. And now that my children are older, I'm getting back to where I'm more full-time. I'm still not 100% full-time, but I'm pretty close. But that's, yeah, definitely an issue.
And your PhD was here in?
Right, so I earned a 2011 curriculum and instruction, and my dissertation was on the math that students learn as a function of programming their own video games.
Is it education?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, college education.
So coming out of school, how long or how many applications did you have to fill out before you finally started kind of figuring out what you were going to do?
Well, for me, while I was ABD, still ABD, I guess, I was sending out applications for academic jobs, and I would say 20 to 25 applications I sent out for academic, strictly academic jobs. The number of applications I sent out for non-academic professional jobs was 1. So I was very lucky. I don't think I'm particularly a good example of stick-to-itiveness and perseverance when it comes to applying for jobs, because they invited me to apply for this job, and I got it in the first round, so I was very lucky.
For me, I didn't mention, but I actually got a job before I graduated because I had an internship. And what happened for me was I left no stone unturned. I went to, when I had my interview, I showed a lot of the work that I did. I had to do, we had to do a business plan. We had to kind of make up a health organization and write a business plan and write initiatives and action steps and everything like that, a really robust business plan. And I showed all of that to in United Healthcare. And so I interviewed for an internship, but I impressed them enough for them to just say, "Do you want a job right here?" And I was like, "Oh yes," because I was nervous. I came into it with, I have 2 children. I really wanted to make sure that this is going to pay off. You know, I'm going to grad school, so it was great to not have that pressure of graduating and then thinking what next, because I left no stone unturned. Like I said, I did everything I needed. I had my options. I went to all of these things that I talked about, and I made sure that I was going to be successful in finding the right fit for me. And the one thing that I did want to say too is, when you're looking at an organization and a place to work for, there's 3 things you want to look for: is the organization itself, the mission statement and the values and what they stand for, the people around you who you're going to work with. Is there going to be mentors that are going to help you? And the last piece, again, like I mentioned, was growth and development. So I saw that, I realized when I did talk to a few people, leadership through the internship, I met a lot of great people, that I knew these are the people I want to be around, and I can learn a lot from them. And so those are the 3 things. You want to know the people you know, you want to, like I said, when they interview, you want to enjoy the people that you work with. You want to have that, you know, feel comfortable, and then, you know, the organization as a whole, and again, growth and development. So those are the three things to look for me that I thought when choosing a place to work, organization.
A gazillion. But like I said before, how I got this job wasn't even a formal application. So it was strange how sitting in these type of workshops, I saw the first one was this effective online profile starting with LinkedIn. And what Hernand said, oh, keywords and all that, and I did all that, and none of those were hits. And then how this job just kind of came to be. So I don't think it's just the application. I think there's way more to it than that.
I think, yeah. You need to decide in advance where you want to go work, and you need to find what I would categorize as backdoor ways to make connections so that randomly, suddenly you're there and wow. So when my husband and I decided, we were living in DC and we decided that we were going to move out here. So there was a job advertised weirdly in the paper because we've been looking at rankings of cities and things. So there was the job for UNLV distance education here. So I was doing my shows for NASA, and frequently I would find schools to connect with for our live video conferences. So I contacted a guy who was here in media and found a school, and they connected the kids from that school through UNLV into my NASA show. Well, so then when I interviewed for the job at NASA, who happens to be on that interview committee except this guy? Of course, wow, what a weird coincidence. Well, it wasn't a weird coincidence. I had orchestrated that, but it didn't seem that way, right? So you need to be many steps ahead and figure out who's there, who, you know, where will they be, how can I run into them in some sort of casual way, so that then they get to know you outside of this very formal interview process. And you're the person, because they know you. And I think that everybody said that's a lot of who you know. It needs to be genuine, that you really want to work there because that's a great fit for you. It fits all those criteria. But I would not make your first interactions with them the moment when you're walking in the door to shake hands to interview, because I guarantee you they're probably going to pick somebody that they've already you know, related to, met, established a connection with before.
I wanted to mention something. Camille had mentioned working in media. One of my jobs in early grad school when I was at my previous institution was I worked at the radio station there. And so there's definitely a confidence that comes with doing live radio or doing TV production that's very important. Confidence is key for sure. So being able to get up in front of a group of people and present your ideas confidently and cogently is important. So looking for other opportunities that you may not think exactly match up to what you want to do is still important. I think radio served me very well. I also did a lot of music performance and stuff and that type of stuff in my undergrad career. So that helped with some of that confidence in getting up in front of a group of people as well. But one of the things I do now in my job at the Springs Preserve is if you go to our YouTube channel, you'll see my face all over the place there. And it's not something it's not something I necessarily chose to do, but I embraced it because I knew it could help advance not just my career, but also the message I was trying to put out there from the Springs Preserve. So that's also very important.
I'll throw out one observation and question. All of you took tremendous initiative and have impressive stories, really inspiring stories. One thing I didn't hear much about is an advisor. I mean, it sounds like you guys took the bull by your own horn, or its own horns, and you ran with it, rather than relying, say, on an advisor or thinking it's an advisor's job to place you. And this gets into one of the tricky issues, is often academic advisors may not know the non-academic world so well. And that's probably instructive for the audience here to contemplate that. And this has been commented on in higher education as the job market expands to explicitly include thinking from day one of non-academic positions. Advisors are a biased lot. They know the academic world, but not the non-academic world as well. So that's one observation. But the question then would be, what would you suggest UNLV could do better? What can we do better to help allow these processes?
I was just thinking that when when I did my PhD, there had to be somebody from a different college, and so for me, that was Dave James in engineering. But I think it would maybe be helpful that one of the 4 people is actually somebody who's completely outside the university. Somebody who's maybe from industry or a professional field that's relevant to, you know, in education. That could be somebody who's from the school district who's in administration, or somebody who's, you know, like in my role, but in yours, obviously, there's somebody at a hospital, or, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
it just seems like that would really help. You know, one of your 4 people should be somebody who's representative of an arm of your discipline that's beyond the walls of the university.
Did you knew all of you what your dissertation would be, or did you seek out an advisor to help you frame your ideas? Seems like a lot of you already knew.
When I came to UNLV, I knew exactly what I wanted to do.
I pretty much knew what I would do.
Actually, I did everything. I really believe in things just kind of being organic, and you know, I had the goal in mind, but I was gonna actually, to Peter's question, was to mention, I think what we can do as a university for each given department, what I saw value was when speakers came out, and each class, like I had healthcare finance was a class that I had, so there was someone from healthcare finance that went there. Then I did another. There was another class that I did was with process improvement in the hospitals, and there was a CNO there, chief nurse officer, that came and spoke about that. So I think if each, you know, the previous, your degree that you got, you can go to that classroom if you're, you know, and then speak out, and that will also help too, because those are practical. You can get practical information from those people that are in there, that are out there, not on the academic. It's a great example. So I think that can happen more. That's what, you know.
Shaped you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would make a big difference to have somebody who's not just an academician.
I think, I don't want to poo-poo on UNLV, but right now everybody knows UNLV is in the silent phase of their $1 billion capital campaign. So you see UNLV Foundation development officers all over town having lunch at McCormick and Schmick, Larry's, whatever. I mean, that's fine, the university needs money, right? But don't just come knocking when you need money. UNLV should be helping the community, being out there all the time. Don't just go to United when you need $1 million for a new wing. So, I mean, stay there the whole time. So I think this new Office of Community Engagement has been formed. I don't know much about it. I think that person or persons, needs to be as much involved internally to know, hey, what's the latest research, everything, and then externally to say, like Camille was saying, oh, there's a NASA teacher looking for X, Y, Z. Oh, I know exactly the person you should be talking. And that person should really be the traffic cop to facilitate these discussions, the connector type of a person. And I think that's a hard skill set to find because, I mean, I don't know anything about chemistry or, pick a topic, archaeology, and would that interest me, and would I remember that 6 months later when I'm having drinks with some other person to remember, oh hey, Nathan Harper works at the Springs Preserve and you should really get to know him because he knows this, and this. So, I mean, that's a hard skill set to hire for, but I mean, I think from the business community, that office needs to be 10, 15, 20 people, even more, bigger than the foundation. Because that's really where those connections get built, then money flows organically after that.
That's fantastic. Well, I think we can leave it at there then. So I would like to thank our panelists for taking the time to come back and join us. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.